While it's not my favourite of the Bronte sister novels, Jane Eyre is a fantastic book and it's deservedly a classic. However, there is one thing about this book that has always confounded me, and I feel like it's confounded lots of other readers of Jane Eyre, and that is Rochester's first wife, Bertha, the crazy lady in the attic. We never get her origin story. Her character is completely swept under the rug until, spoiler alert, she sets Thornfield Hall on fire and throws herself out the window. There's a lot of mystery surrounding her character, and for years people always wondered that. You know, what's her story? Why is she so crazy? I suppose partly the reason it was so mysterious at the time is because it was a Victorian novel and mental illness, especially in women, was incredibly taboo. You weren't allowed to talk about it, which is why I'm so grateful that over 100 years later, a writer finally filled us in on what happened to Rochester's first wife with John Rhys's novel, Wide Sargasso Sea. Now, we need to talk about this because this is a fantastic book. And we also need to talk about the career of Jean Rhys because it's quite an interesting one too. So Jean Rhys was a writer who put out a bunch of novels in the 20s and 30s, but to no commercial success. Her books weren't selling. And she sort of went underground throughout the 40s and 50s. A lot of people, in fact, thought she died because she just wasn't in love with writing anymore. And then, based on sort of her obsession with Jane Eyre, she liked the book so much, she always felt that Jane Eyre was very one-sided. It only tells the sort of English side of the story. It never explains, you know, what happened to Rochester's first wife. And that is what inspired her to write Wide Sargasso Sea, which came out in the 60s. It won the W.H. Smith's Literary Award and became an overnight sensation that has only sort of soared over time and has been solidified as a modern classic by Penguin. I suppose in a way Jean Rhys might have seen herself in Rochester's first wife in the sense that she was this woman who didn't really get the respect that she was entitled to in her lifetime. Like, even though this book was a success, she was in her 70s and wouldn't live to see, you know, the leaps and bounds that it would make. So what is her origin story? Why was Rochester's first wife the crazy lady in the attic? How did she get there? Why was she mad? Well, Wide Sargasso Sea, it actually takes its name from the body of water that's between Europe and the West Indies, because this book is actually all about colonialism. Rochester's first wife, her name is actually Antoinette Cosway, and she was a white Creole who married an Englishman who took her away from her homeland. And the book is all about possession and how Rochester is very controlling and abusive. She no longer has any sense of free will. She has to obey everything that Rochester sort of expects from her. And so we get this really scathing novel about the other side of the story. It's very easy to get swept up in the love stories of Victorian writers and to idolise these rich white gentlemen, not realising that a lot of them got their wealth from these overseas colonial territories and the way that they would exploit and control these women in a way that was never really explained until novels like Wide Sargasso Sea came out. This book really exposes the one-sided nature of our culture, how history is always written by the oppressors, and it's important that we see both sides of things to get the full story. Really, go read Wide Sargasso Sea. It will completely change the way you look at Jane Eyre.